Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tracy Show, episode number, I believe, 8. I'm joined by my special guest, Ron, who I thought was named Tracy, but he goes by Tracy. So it's going to sound like I'm talking to myself, but I'm not. I'm talking to somebody else named Tracy. So,
Yeah,
um,
Tracy. Yeah, that's my show. She's talking about me.
no,
It's my
I'm talking. The Tracy Show is all about. Well, it's all about third-party candidates, um, who are running for office. And like I said, I'm joined today by Tracy, and I'll let him introduce himself. He is actually making history. He is my second African American person to be interviewed, and he is the first African American male.
yes.
So,
Yes.
congratulations, you, sir, have made history. And before we get started, I got a bunch of bills to pay. First of all, I want to invite you all to visit my website, TRACYMediaLLC.com, because in January, this show is going to be broadcasted live on my website. So you'll want to make sure, as January gets closer, to start visiting my website. Please become my Patreon. I've got 5, and I want to do so much, but the scripted show I want to do is going to cost at least $100,000. And despite the fabulous settings that I have, I don't have $100,000. So please support me on Patreon. If you are running for office, please email me at TRACYMediaLLC@gmail.com. I know the election is Tuesday, but we have people who want to run in 2023 and 2024. It's never too early to get out and start. And if you so choose, you can always cash at me at $TracyMedia74. And I said before I started this interview, I do want to invite you to subscribe to my channel. I have 88. I just need 12 more. I know there's 12 of you out there who want to subscribe. Please do. It doesn't cost you anything. Like this video, share this video. And now I'm going to talk about next week's show. So next week is election week. And instead of just asking, hey, everybody who wants to come on with me, I'm going to do a solo show next week. I'm going to be talking about the election, what major races. So we'll be talking a lot about the duopoly because unfortunately they're in the forefront and us independents are kind of left behind. But I will be doing that. I don't know how long I will go, but join me next week on the election show. And with that all being said, with all my bills being paid, Tracy, how are you?
I'm pretty good, fellow Tracy. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Of course, I always start off with letting you introduce yourself and tell what office you're running for, where is it located, and why you chose to run for it.
Okay, I'm running for city councilman in Jacksonville, Florida, District 8, which is the northwest part of Jacksonville. And I'm running on the Libertarian Party ticket. And as Eric Parker mentioned before when you had him on your show, I also want to give a shout out to Eric Parker for, connecting us and, so that I could be interviewed with you today. So definitely want to thank him for giving me that shout out and giving me that exposure. There's me, Eric Parker, and Pastor Jeremy Warabaugh. Pastor Jeremy Warabaugh is running in District 2, in at-large number 5, which is the entire city of Jacksonville. Eric Parker is running in District 2, that's the northeast side of Jacksonville. And I'm running in, like I said, in District 8. So it's the first time in Jacksonville's history where you have 3 third-party candidates, specifically Libertarian Party candidates, because we've had independents before, but it's the first time Libertarians have put their hat into the ring. And now we're all on a united front to insert ourselves in the office. So we're like you can compare us to the triumvirate, of the Roman Empire. So we just pretty much came together. We sat down. We looked at everything in a logistics frame and in a way that's most efficient for us to run in certain positions. And we all agreed unanimously that it would be us 3. So we tried to, as best as we could, put our best foot forward into running this race. Now, specifically to me, the reason I'm running in District 8 of Jacksonville, Florida, is because overall, the city of Jacksonville is $2 billion in debt as a city by itself. And to get that paid off, each citizen in Jacksonville has to pay a tax burden of $10,200 each. That's not to mention the payroll taxes, income taxes, inflation taxes, and all the other taxes that are levied against us, which is putting us closer into impoverished conditions. And so, yeah, I decided to go ahead and enter the race because we get tired of having barbershop talk. Eventually, you got to go ahead and say, hey, with all the ideas that I have, and it seems that everybody around me is resonating with those ideas, let me go ahead and represent their best interests along with mine and see how we can work together to bring the solutions that we need to alleviate the government spending and the overreach in the private sector in my District 8.
Okay, so here's a question that I ask Eric because I tend to lean left. I'm pretty sure you've seen my videos, so you know I'm a left leaner. And so I was asking him, when you go out and you talk to voters, no matter what party they affiliate with, what is you literally just said it. You said that Jacksonville is $2 billion in debt, correct?
Correct.
How did it get there? Because that seems like a tremendously high number. And what do you want to do to alleviate that?
Well, the Jacksonville's gotten that way because they have way more liabilities than they have assets. The number one line item on the budget of Jacksonville's budget is JSO, the fire department, and public works. In those three top billing line items, there are a lot of unfulfilled retiree obligations, and a lot of funding has been parlayed to a lot of union workers, a lot of people in those sectors. But what happens is when government gets in the way of retirement spending, or what's the word? Not obligations, but what's the feeling when people not obligated, but I forget the term for it, but I guess benefits. For the lack of a better word, I'll say benefits packages, things of that nature. When government steps into the benefits sector for retirees, they end up charging back themselves. And with that money that they've inflated, they end up parlaying that public funding into other sectors, which creates more debt. When you have more debt, then it kills the purchasing power of the dollar, which compels the Federal Reserve to keep printing out more money so they could alleviate themselves, quote unquote, of that debt. But it doesn't. It just sinks us closer into deeper economic hole, because once you do that, taxes go up higher, the cost of living gets higher, the cost of food gets higher. So for us to be in the workforce, working 9 to 5s, we're literally like working for maybe 30 cents of the one whole dollar that we would actually like. So yeah, that's one of the reasons of how they got themselves in that big economic hole, because the majority of Jacksonville, Florida is made up of elderly. The state of Florida, period, is made up of a lot of elderly people, but Jacksonville is a really specific case of that. It's like number 2 dominant age group. The number 1 dominant age group in Jacksonville are the Gen Zers, Generation Xers. So yeah, they make up like about 17% of the entire population. And then you have the elders, and then you have the millennials, and go on down from there. So by the time I reach 65 years old, I'm not going to have any retirement benefits, because they projected that in the next 11 years, retirements are going to be, that account is going to be depleted to zero, because you see it's all centralized, it's monopolized. So when the money runs out from there, everybody else's money runs out as well. And this is the problem that I have as a libertarian about public institutions monopolizing the private sector. If there was a way, because what I plan on alleviating that is to create a privatized benefits and retiree system, so that one central banking cartel doesn't have the entire gamut of the funds that are being parlayed from us. Because how that works is everybody that is not working, they're being paid for everyone that is working. That's where all these payroll taxes come in. So people who haven't been working, part of my paycheck goes to their retirement. Doesn't matter where you are, it goes into that person's retirement. The problem is we have a big labor shortage going on, not in Jacksonville, but around the U.S., where there's not enough money to satiate the retirement benefits of those that came before us, let alone me trying to save for my own retirement. That's going to be little to nothing. So, yeah, and today's labor market, we have this phenomenon called quiet quitting. First of all, before we get to quiet quitting, there is overemployment. Overemployment is where you have a lot of people who are typically overqualified with a certain position at a good job, and they go into working at another job, such as, say, fast food, for example. They end up going and picking up those jobs, taking away jobs from young people just coming out of school or looking for experience in the workforce, but you have a lot of people who are in one job taking on an extra job, all right? And then so the quiet quitting phenomenon happens where you have someone working two jobs, two full-time jobs, mind you, because the goal of working those two full-time jobs so they can have better benefits packages, right? From both jobs. And they're so overworked and burnt out, they just end up doing barely just enough to get by on that second job. So for the money you're paying for this person who is overemployed, they're not producing nearly enough to justify their pay. And on top of that, someone who would be giving that double production, they've been shut out of the workforce because of the overemployment.
And when you run on that platform, what hindrances or what concerns are the voters that you speak to? What are they saying? This is my concern, or are they buying into this idea that you're proposing?
It's a twofold thing. For one, when I'm going out there and I'm campaigning and I'm going, because what I do 7 days a week, I go out there and I walk and I gather petitions and I go door to door, meeting them face to face. I've been to so many corners of my district. It's crazy. And early on, I went all around Jacksonville, I went all around Jacksonville because that was the criteria during that time. It wasn't until April of this year, when it came 2023, April 4th specifically, where they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and tell everyone to go specifically only into their districts and then get the signatures from here on out. So walking through my district and gathering petitions, it depends on where you go, where the concerns are. For example, in my area, in north side of Jacksonville and northern parts of District 8, their issue is crime. Their issue is crime. They're worried about feeling safe. They're worried about crime, and they're worried about the children, what they're going to have to do to express themselves, what activities are going to be available, how we're going to mitigate that. Now, when you go to, say, another side of District 8, when you go further out west, their issue is infrastructure, big infrastructure issue. Number one, the streets look like trash. Potholes are the size of moon craters. Garbage in the streets on city property, but the city workers fail to go over there and pick that stuff up and clean up. You go to the eastern part of District 8, their concern is employment, right? Their concern is big on employment. So it depends on where you go. Those are where they what they talk about. And you go to another area in District 8, they're concerned. They'll be concerned. Pretty much the same thing. It starts to blend together after a while because in our area, it's a uniform issue of crime and what young people can do to mitigate them from crime, street life, all this type of stuff. So I've done so much campaigning to the point where I know, depending on the area that I am, they have a certain interest. Now, when I go door to door and I talk to them, this is my whole pitch. I say, hey, my name is Tracy Robison. I'm running for city council in District 8. My platform is to stop the gas taxes, stop the property taxes, and to stop the neglect of public works, which goes back into city services, picking up trash, doing potholes, things of that nature. And That's what I lead with. And then from there, if they agree with those, then they go and express to me their own concerns, and I listen to them, and then we can talk about a solution moving forward. I can't hear you.
You answered the question the way I asked it. I guess what I'm thinking is when you talk about this idea of of oh boy, I'm not sure how to frame it. When you talk specifically about establishing a privately held company to manage benefits, what's the reaction to that?
They react very positive to that. At best, it's very positive. At worst, they're morbidly curious to how that would go down, because we're so used to having the government provide these services for us. But I tell them all the time, if we have independent and localized companies taking on those benefit packages, then it will be a lot better, because you don't have just one centralized agency handling that responsibility. Because if one agency is handling the responsibility, then everybody's going to crumble under it. There's
Good.
going to be, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Nope, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's going to be everybody's issue. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you also mentioned something that I thought, and I know the last interview I had, Mr. Parker, he brought it up too, and that was eliminating the gas tax. What type of impact financially would that have?
It would have a great impact, because it will save the city a lot more money than what they're spending on it right now. Now, the reason why in Jacksonville they increased the gas tax to 6 extra cents this past January at the beginning of 2022, they did it of course, to line up their own pockets, because there was a lot of developers and a lot of corporations who were benefiting from this loan out that they just signed a contract with. And of course, the council people that are sitting on that board, they get a percentage of that, and then they end up getting a pay raise while we get a pay cut. So what they plan on doing is working with a program called JTA, Jacksonville Transportation Authority, to use that money to fund this infrastructure project called the Emerald Trail, which only benefits a very small percentage of people in Jacksonville. You know, it's a what do you call it? A transportation upgrade, for to create a new trail in Jacksonville and have commute to go from this area to that area. But it's only for the benefit of the downtown area that they're renovating, that goes back to the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. His name is Shahid Khan, and they end up appropriating millions of dollars of our tax money to him in order to benefit the plan that he has for downtown, in correlation with the Downtown Investment Authority. What the Jacksonville City Council failed to do is to put a check on what the DIA, or the Downtown Investment Authority, has authority on, concerning what money could we use from our taxpayers to fund certain projects here and there. Instead of consulting with us and seeing if it's going to be of a benefit to us, and pitch it just like with any other business or with any other shareholder. You come to us, you sit down with us, and then you walk through what this would do, what this won't do, what we may sacrifice, what we may benefit from the sacrifice, and how we can move forward. They don't do any of that at all. They go to the people who would reap the benefits of that, which will be the very few within the District 8 City Council. And on top of that 6 cent increase, they're going to fund 200 businesses that are contracted with JTA. My problem with that is, back in September of 2020, our mayor Curry, who's a Republican, by the way, he shut down the economy in Jacksonville during the COVID outbreak for health reasons. But what that ended up doing for health reasons, he ended up shutting down 130 small businesses and ended up crashing the housing market in Jacksonville, because they fired and furloughed so many people in Jacksonville because of these health concerns, as opposed to letting these independent companies, independent clinics handle the outbreak on their own. An example of that would be, we have clinics and hospitals, very local in Jacksonville. We have plenty of those around. They already had COVID testing kits when the outbreak first came about, so that people would know ahead of time, immediately when it came on the onset, what to do and how to react, right? But with the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, what they ended up doing was outlawing independent clinics from administering those testing kits. So they made us surrender all of our kits to the FDA, to the federal government. And about 6-7 months later, when the outbreak went everywhere like wildfire, and people's jobs are taken away from them unconstitutionally for no reason, and the housing market ended up going down, because the people who were fired and furloughed, they would go to their homes that they were paying rent to, and the landlords who was relying on that money to pay for their own mortgages and to create the generational wealth and that liquid income they could pass down to generation, they both ended up suffering, because you put them in very precarious positions. Number one, the guy that was just furloughed, he's putting his money that he's getting from Biden, by way of the stimulus checks, he's putting that in his own bank account. He ain't gonna pay nobody. And plus, he knows that with the CDC moratorium that they put out, that they have to go through the courts in order to get them evicted. And he's like, look, man, I'm just gonna try to hedge myself against an economic situation that I'm very unfamiliar with, that the city of Jacksonville has never seen before, that we were very unprepared for. Jacksonville was broke long before the pandemic, but what it did was lift the veil about the really dire situation that our pocketbook has. So, and the landlord, he has to go through this bureaucratic process that them two never agreed to. When government interferes with a contract made by two consenting parties and it becomes a third party, that's where confusion happens. That's where all the stalling happens, and people end up losing. So homes got foreclosed on, got shut down, got surrendered to the banks like JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, what's another one? Merrill Lynch. They end up getting big revenue coming in. But it wasn't really capital gains, because all of this money that they've gotten was just from debt, not from actual profit, but it was just debt allocated from one place into the next, So it was a big money scheme. They just transferred money from the Federal Reserve to the people, disenfranchised them, and had the debt money passed on to the banks. And so they end up making big money. So the people that come from out of state, not just people, but businesses, they were saying that there are a lot of people, like regular folks, migrating into Jacksonville. No, these were big companies, big corporations. They come out, they come in, they take on the leases from the banks, they end up buying those notices and stuff like that. And they end up buying up that parcel of those homes that were foreclosed on, previously held by private citizens. And then what do they do then? Then they end up jacking up the rent, because of the fact that you got to account for the tax lien, you got to account for the insurance risen up by the property tax liability, and all this other type of stuff. So the next person, average person, want to get an apartment or try to get a home, they have a lot more to contend with, because of the government manipulating the market under the guise of public safety. So yeah, that was my whole spiel concerning why government should stay out of private institutions, so that we can actually have a solution that we could have handled on our own.
And you just got to another question that just came to mind. So when you're talking, homelessness is a problem everywhere. The amount of people who are unhoused has increased because they simply can't afford to pay either their rent or their mortgage. Has your campaign considered any type of response to that in terms of what you would do, or is that something that you're looking into?
It's very much something that I'm looking into, but I do know that homelessness in city politics is a big criminal enterprise that they love to make their bread off of. Because as long as there's homeless people, there's more welfare to pass out. And ways to mitigate that welfare is to take that money that they would put in these public institutions, taking advantage of the people. We should put that money into rehabilitation. and giving them jobs so they can actually start their upward mobility. Because if not, we're going to have the same problem going over and over again. Say, for example, in California, even in Jacksonville too, they end up just moving the homeless people into these hotel rooms. But what that did was devalue the value of the of course it's the hotel industry. I'm trying to think of the sector, the hospitality sector, right? And end up crushing it down because you have the workers in there that's got to work twice as hard for very unkept people who are living out in the street. Now they expect to follow code and conduct at the hotels, but now they don't have to because they've been government mandated to go into these hotels, and they end up shutting out people coming from all over Florida, all over anywhere else to actually come to a nice hotel room where they can rent the rooms at, because they have homeless people there living in there now. And nobody's going to go to a hotel that's holding a bunch of homeless people. That's just not going to happen. That's very counterintuitive. It's regressive, and it's not a good business strategy. Or let alone hold conventions, hold conferences, hold any type of meetings where they go into the courtyard of the hotel and they have these productive discussions. They're not going to go there if it's ramaged by homeless people or undesirable characters. It's just not going to happen. So just moving them from one place to the next, just like I said earlier about moving debt from one place into the next, it doesn't make any sense. So to alleviate that, we have to, like I said before, get out the government spending in the private institutions so that people can make the proper solutions that they can make on their own. And with that will come the solutions for homelessness. Like, for example, property taxes have gotten so high because recently they've decided on raising the property taxes 1 millage rate higher than it was usually in order to pay for public school teachers. Now, public school teachers, they already make an exorbitant amount higher than private school teachers, charter school teachers, homeschool teachers, and all this type of stuff, because they're funded by taxpayer money already. You're a government employee. You're already getting paid more with better packages and better benefits than anybody else out here, as I've mentioned before. So that issue that was happening in Jacksonville, we need to raise the property tax to pay for teachers because they're leaving, because they're not getting enough pay. It was a lie. It was a front. Out of the about 300 teachers that left the school, only maybe, I think about 50 of those or less cited that it was because of pay. It was because of institutional reasons why they ended up leaving the school. But it was nothing about pay, because they were getting paid well enough. The superintendent of Duval County Public Schools here in Jacksonville, she just got a raise recently to get paid. She was getting paid over $100,000 before. Now she's getting paid $300,000 a year. She gets paid twice as high amount as the mayor of Jacksonville himself. So they could have kept that same energy and give it to the public school teachers if that was the reason why they wanted to raise our property taxes so bad anyway. But it wasn't. So with her getting $300,000, my biggest question was, say I'm a city council candidate. City council doesn't have anything to do with public schools. That's for the school board, because the public school institution is its own government by itself. They got their own charter. So that's not my jurisdiction. But it became my issue when they said, we're going to put up your money and the value of your house to give it to these teachers. And I don't have any children. I'm 31 years old. I'm not even married. I don't have children and going to school. So why am I paying my property taxes, me and my family's property taxes for kids that are not even mine, even if they graduate or not? It doesn't make any sense. And my sister, she has 3 children. She homeschools them. And not only she has to work a full-time job, she has to tailor her education to her children the way she wants to maximize their potential. Now she has to also pay property taxes on children. They're not even hers. She got her kids at home, but she's still paying property taxes. And this is why private school teachers have a less admission rate than public school teachers, because parents pay their private school teachers directly, but they can't afford it because they're already paying out their taxes to public schools. And so when people tell me about school choice, we can't have school choice unless we take away the funding of public school teachers from private individuals. We shouldn't be having to pay the public school institutions. If you want to really maximize education, have them compete in the market like everybody else. That way, teachers are not going to be just in school getting raises because they've been there the longest. They're going to get their raises and then get paid based off of their productivity and how much their education benefits children, actually. And it's going to create competition that's going to weed out more than half the people in public schools anyway, because, okay, come to find out, all y'all suck because y'all never had to actually come into competition like that and actually compete for the parents' payment to pay their kids. But anyway, property taxes is the reason why there's a lot of homelessness. But there's so many government schemes that the city of Jacksonville is putting in that's raising up the property taxes and creating the homelessness. Because once you do that, the cost of living goes higher.
Yep. So I usually I ask this question early on, but I'll go ahead and ask it now. I hate to use the word assume. In your race, I am going to figure that there is a Democrat running, a Republican running, and then there's you. Am I correct? Okay. So what
Yeah,
I always ask my guests to do is to talk about the candidates, and I always start off with, tell me what it is about your candidates, each of them, that you agree with, an issue that they have that you actually agree with.
yeah, very good question. There's a Democrat running in the race. She's a black woman, and her stances, I'm assuming, because she just came into the race a few months ago. She just came into the race, and she barely has any information. She doesn't have a website. She doesn't have a political Facebook account. She doesn't have anything to really for me to go off of. However, there was an article that I recognize her name from that because she was in News for Jax a few years ago, complaining about how the government was. When I say government, I mean the city of Jacksonville's government. I'm not talking about national. I don't really do national, because I'm all diluted as much as possible, right? So when the city of Jacksonville's government wanted to tear down this elementary school in order to build an affordable housing community that was going to cost us taxpayers $700,000, almost $1 million. And now the school is a cultural staple in the city. It's called Lakeshore Elementary. It's been there since the 40s. I believe it's been there since 1949 or 1946. You'll be hard pressed to find somebody in Jacksonville who hasn't graduated from that school, has been there for so long. And it's an art school. Architecture is beautiful. It's probably the best built elementary school I ever seen. And it was perfect it's perfectly placed in this neighborhood where it's like in this roundabout. And around that roundabout, there's these homes and, the kids can come out and it creates a safe haven, right? For kids to be around and for families to be together and monitor the kids. And because everybody over there in that area, they know each other since time immemorial, because there's a tight knit community there. And people always tell me that they want something for the kids and all that stuff. But we have to go to the source of where these problems are and keep going back to the city government. Because like I say, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And of course, they had a lot of protests and going to city council meetings, complaining to the current city councilwoman that, no, we don't want them to demolish the school or even shut down the school for some affordable housing project. You know what I'm saying? That's going to bring undesirable characters. It's going to bring drugs. It's going to bring all this type of stuff because we have something right here that's perfect for our children to get their education and keep us together as a community. But they didn't listen. They ended up shutting down the school anyway. And now it's just sitting there on taxpayer dollars, just sitting there collecting dust. And it's just a shame. So that is the issue that I'm definitely going to tackle that I do agree with her on. And of course,
Okay.
everybody that I go over there and I talk to them, we're all on the same page because I remember that time when they were protesting a while ago to not shut down that school because it was so important to them, important to the people. But like I said, the people in city government want to appease the contractors and the lobbyists that want to come in and create their own vision of the city without our consent. So when it comes to her, I agree with her on that. Now, as far as the Republican is a black man, there's all black people running in District 8, 3 of us, and with 3 completely different parties, which is pretty cool. We have the Republican black man, he's running. But the very interesting detail about that is he is the nephew of the current sitting incumbent of District 8, but that's neither here nor there. Um, there's a few things that I agree with him on, you know what I'm saying, as far as, of course, you know, we have to have something for the kids and, you know, just crime and better parks, and, you know, but everybody agrees with that. That's fine. That's cool. It doesn't really separate him from the rest of the bunch, but yeah, of course, those are those, of course, you know, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, those are things that I agree with them on,
Yep. So
even if they're opponents.
now here comes the opposite question. What
Mhm.
is their major stand that you disagree about?
When it comes to the Democrat woman, I don't know much about her stances to have me say I blatantly disagree with, where I can completely separate myself from her completely automatically. But she's a Democrat, so there's that. And then you have the Republican. He, like I said, there's not much information on these people. I'm very transparent. I have a lot of things that I have lined up where people can look and see, okay, cool, he's about this and he's not about that. But when it comes to them two, it's kind of toss it in the air. But with him, he has the issue that I have with every Republican. They want every solution to be a government oriented solution, and that's for both of the parties. Is that they want to go by way of government to get these solutions done, and you know that's pretty much about it. That's pretty much all. First, because I'm only answering this in the way that this is just the information that I have of them. Is really little to none. If I give you the names of the people that are running against me in the district, you'll be saying the same thing. Well, I don't know what they're really about. They just say, hey, I'm running for city council and I like parks and crime is bad and I like children. Okay, we all do, but there's nothing really specific there. As far as how they can, because with me, now maybe the next question you're going to ask me is how I can separate myself from both of them. Now,
Yeah, actually, the next question is on the screen because Theus has jumped in with a question that I really think is a good one.
You said that question itself?
Yes, that is a question that I was probably going to get to, but we jumped over it. So if you want to answer that question or continue on what you were talking about, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, of course. What separates me from both of them is how much more I can elaborate on the source of the issues that are at hand and how much of a solution that I do have. For example, last year in Jacksonville from October 3rd to April 4th, we didn't have trash and recycling because the city of Jacksonville failed to renew the contract with the trash company to get the trash. And those that did have it, they were still paying taxes on the service, for everybody else that don't have it. And those that don't have it, we were still paying out of our pocket, which is really stupid. Because like I said before, government is the only entity where they want a raise for failure. They want to get more money allocated to them when something goes wrong. Any business around the states, when something doesn't go right, we withdraw our money and they shut down. But with government, there's no chance because if you don't pay taxes to them, they're going to have agents come to your door. They're going to put them boys at your door, basically, and they're going to put you to jail. And there are consequences to that. So that's why we say in the Libertarian Party that taxation is theft. But anyway, my solution to the public works as far as trash and recycling, I have an independent company that's ready to come in and pick up the slack from where the city left off. Now, of course, trash is picked up again. Like I said, they got it back in April. Now, they've taken away some services like picking up glass from the service, and the service is now a little more expensive because living expenses, things of that nature. And I'm going to do a census around District 8 and ask if the people would like to stay with the city government contract or go with the independent trash company, because I like to offer choice. Those that want to stay with the government contract, they can, that's fine. A lot of people have Stockholm syndrome, that's okay. But, but for people that want to go the independent route, go to the independent contracted company where they pay directly out of their pocket, and they can withdraw their subscription if they want to, fire them and go to the next person. I'm going to reimburse them 6 months of the tax money that was taken from them during the time where the trash wasn't being picked up by the city government.
Yep. And I see Merlin has checked in with a question, and this goes back to your earlier answer. His question is: you support schools, you support education, however, you do not support teachers. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Of course, I support teachers, but I support the free market way, the free market solution of actually evaluating what teachers are best qualified to educate our children. Like I said earlier, I love education. I just don't like public education. I don't agree with government inserting themselves in education. That's why we have predatory loaning practices where everybody is caught up in student loan debt. 70% of it is held by women, just to get 70% of everything. There's a lot of benefit packages, along with that. Biden wants to do the student loan forgiveness thing, but the problem with that is it's going to put us deeper into economic desperation, because now we have to pay our tax dollars to alleviate someone else's debt that they end up accruing for themselves based on the education they chose that isn't conducive to the economy at large. For example, I'm not really sure what you're going to do with the philosophy degree in today's economy. I'm not sure what you're going to do with being arts major in today's economy, things, stuff like that. But they get these student loans and the government guarantees these loans, which makes tuition much more expensive. So if government will take themselves out of the education, then we will have better schools, because the schools, like I said before, they'll be more qualified because they'll have to compete in the free market. And if they don't, then they're going to be discarded. We have a lot of teachers unions that restrict the growth of education. Teachers unions are pushing education that's not conducive for a growing environment in the economy where we can tailor the education based off of the immediate needs of what we need right now. And that is a very big problem. People who don't have children, like I said earlier, people who don't have children that go to these schools should have to pay the taxes provided for these children, right? And the schools themselves, they can pay the teachers based off of the performance in that educational field. And I'm not saying teachers should just rot and not have any money. Of course they should have any money, but they should compete just like anybody else. If you're a teacher that's most qualified, that has a greater output in education, such as private school teachers, because they don't get paid nearly as much as public school teachers, but they yield twice the results of graduation rates, of grades going up, and all this type. And there's a reason for that, is because parents pay them directly for their services. Otherwise, they wouldn't see them. So yeah, I definitely support teachers, but not when they're sponsored by government agencies that shields them from merit.
Okay, so we've got a lot of questions coming in the comment section, which I appreciate. I'm going to get to them. However, I do have my own question, and I have asked this to every candidate that I've had on. What is it personally that you have given up to run for this office?
My bank account.
Well, that was a correct answer.
That's about it. I gave my whole bank account, man, because running, because I don't have experience in politics in that region. We're the Libertarian Party. We're a third party. It's a very grassroots type of thing, and we don't really have the 200 years of Republicans and Democrats, having that well-oiled machine to groom candidates or having campaign managers or trainers to have candidates who are properly vetted and prepared to take on this task. So a lot of the things I ended up coming across, I had to learn on my own, being a first-time candidate. I don't have any background in politics, but I do say that my biggest background in politics was being the victim of politics, only earning 30 cents on the dollar that I work for, being subject to living expenses going up, being subjected to all these mandates, codes, and statutes that I have to be subject to because of a monopolized service agency that's the government. And that's just my biggest thing. My biggest goal of being in city council with the background that I have is to go in there and tell them to keep their hands out of the private sector's pockets, because that's the only way that the city is going to grow. And so Yeah, of course, I've lost a lot of family time, of course. But the thing about it, my family, they're very supportive, and that's another thing. They're very unfamiliar with all of this as well. Being I'm only 31 years old, and a young black man or African American, whatever they're calling us, Afro American, whatever, melanated American, whatever they're calling us in this generation. Um, going through this, it's not like we have a staff of people ready to say, all right, cool, let's go ahead and do this. I mean, let's make it happen. I had to pretty much go on non-treaded ground, but that's what it takes. And the biggest thing that kept me going was the support that I had from the surrounding community that believes in what I'm saying, and even those who are the most skeptical, they are looking forward to see what I can do. I'd rather take complete skepticism over apathy. I have a lot of people who are apathetic, a lot of people who don't care at all whatsoever, and I can understand that because there is no good relationship with City Hall and the constituents they're supposed to represent. So I have to take that on, and I have to give up a lot of personal time for myself and actually go there, go door to door, like I said earlier, and speak to these people face to face, so that they can see how committed I am to our growth and development and upward mobility as a District 8 in Jacksonville.
Yep. So here is another question. How does a community operate central services without taxes? Where will the revenue come from? For those unable to afford the open market prices, how would they get services?
Let me see how the community operates essentially without taxes. Well, these are with capital gains, and they can allocate the private company can allocate taxes based off of an agreed upon amount that everyone can acquiesce to, just like that. Just how I'll put it this way: the same model we have in this from the central government that we operate on publicly today, it can operate the same way in a private way, because it'll just be a lot more. It'll be a lot more not liability, but a lot more consequences immediately dealing with private sector as opposed to public sector, where you have a lot of bureaucracies shielding you away from consequences of your actions. Like, for example, like I said earlier, with the trash pickup, if no one picks up the trash, then they'll just be fired and they'll be cast out, and then we can just get somebody else. But with government, then there is no accountability for their actions. You just got to stick it out, tough it out, and hopefully we can pray for the best. But with an independent company, you have a lot more flexibility. You have a lot more reach. Now, with taxes, if that recycling company wanted to, all right, cool, but everything that you spend on a percentage will go to, this, that, and the third, then that's going to be up to that private company. But with yeah, that's pretty much about it. It will just not be a government coercing you by way of armed IRS agents that they hired 87,000 of to come with the bayonet if you don't pay up. It's not going to be that way, because now the people are in a lot more control. But after all, we are the patrons who are actually paying.
Yep. So here is another question from Marlon. And this is just a simple yes or no. Do you want to privatize public schools?
I don't want schools to be public at all.
So that would be a yes, I'm assuming.
But I just want to be careful with the wording, because I don't want to privatize public schools. I don't want public schools. Period. We
You
have
don't, okay, so now I'm understanding. So you want no public schools at
exactly
all. Okay.
ex-
And you want those schools, if I'm understanding you, to compete on the quote
open
unquote
market.
open market. Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Just
Just like
want to make
just like
sure I was following you.
just like
Okay.
yeah, just like any business. For example, you have karate dojos. Imagine paying for out of your taxes to a karate dojo, and you don't even take karate. What good would that do? If you're having the kids going to karate class, why are you paying money to have it to stay open?
Yeah. And of course, I'm encouraging my audience to ask questions, but this is the portion where I always name issues and I ask the candidate to give a brief statement about what their ideas are or what their party ideas are on. Now, I did not ask Mr. Parker this one, so I would be, and this is a national issue, I would be curious to hear your thoughts about reparations for African Americans.
No.
Okay, could you expand on that?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm just. I like to give yes or no first before I get time to elaborate because I don't like talking around it to come to a final conclusion. But yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not for reparations. I believe it's another form of government welfare that we don't need because what the government essentially wants to give us is something that's little to worthless. It's not worth the dollar that it's printed on. They want more money. Say, for example, some suggest reparations in the way of getting land, by way of the government, but if you're getting land by way of the government, then the government is going to own that land, and they can kick you off when they feel like it. And everything that comes out of that land is going to be a percentage going to go to the government entity that allowed the land to be given to you. And for example, there's some suggested that they want to be subsidized by way of taxes, to have their business start up, have other businesses that's around pay a portion of their income to go and start up their businesses. But that's insufficient. It's going to create market failure because now you're putting yourself in a position where people didn't ask for your services, but you want them to invest in you coercively by way of the government to put a gun to their head and say, put your money over there for this black business to come up. For example, you go to a place where everybody wears dashikis, but by way of reparations, you want to build a business that builds t-shirts. Even though nobody wears t-shirts, they wear dashikis, or even loincloths, right? They have no need for your services, but you want to go in there and establish a business where they got to get their capital gains income and their tax that could be allocated to their own business and expand because the people actually asked for that service. Now you want them to take money and put it over to you because you feel like you deserve it. Like you feel, like they're supposed to be obligated to giving you their hard-earned money for a service they never asked for. So that creates market failure. And just like with any government agency, you're going to say, well, no one's supporting us, so we need more funding from the government to give us some more t-shirts. Like I said, nobody asked for the t-shirts. Go ahead and just, disband the company and then have somebody else, another entrepreneur, utilize those resources for a better solution. So, or even reparations in the way of money. Okay, so they want to get money from the government. We already had reparations in the form of money. It was the stimulus checks given by the Biden administration. It was the very same thing. They end up dissecting who was supposed to be earning this money. They give it out. And you know what that did? That put us in a much more of a debt deficit than anything. That put us closer to poverty because anything the government gives out is going to get back in taxation. You see what I'm saying? It's the very same thing.
Next issue. I'm pretty sure I know how you're going to answer this, but everybody's answer, all the libertarians I've had have answered this question pretty much the same way. Second Amendment rights, i.e. gun control laws.
There should be no gun control laws at all. Because,
okay. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Because I have a follow-up question. Because I'm like, well, what? So, are you? Well, no, I'll go ahead and ask it, and then I'll let you answer. So, are you against, like raising the, like, are you for background checks? Like basic things that I would say are common sense background checks, not letting people who have had issues with the the criminal justice entities have access to guns, those type of things.
Absolutely. I'm just for all those things on a private level. Just remove government and you got me. That's cool. Because what government is going to do, people who are law-abiding citizens who never had any issues, they're going to be the ones who's not going to be able to defend themselves, or be able to feed their families because government is going to blanket everybody in the same boat for their own best interest. We have, we're allied with NATO, right? We're allied with NATO, the group NATO, the military group. You know about that?
Yes.
And as a condition of being a part of NATO, 12% of our taxation and our resources go into NATO operations, and which means that part of our weaponry and our guns goes to NATO, just like that. And so there's a reason why they want to restrict people of owning firearms because the government themselves want to use those guns to colonize the world, right? They want to use that money, get with their NATO buddies, with their NATO gang, and gangbang on everybody else, and offer our weapons and our weaponry to foreign countries so that we can fight wars against other nations by their proxy. Same thing with us fighting a war with Russia using Ukraine as a proxy.
So this next issue is really important to me. It's the
Matter
one.
of fact, before you continue on, I want to make sure I'm very clear about that. You know, I'm very much for background checks, about having a credit system in place for everyone to.
Yeah, I think that's where I was going towards because I've heard some, and not libertarians, I've heard especially Republicans are saying, um, I'm against background checks. I'm like, but why? We
Yeah,
need
I'm
them.
not. Yeah, I'm not that extreme. I'm not that extreme because people have common sense enough. People who own firearms and who have guns know good and full well that not everybody should have them. And I'm all for private institutions being created to mitigate that issue. If one company says that you can't have the gun, then you're not going to get that gun. You have to go somewhere else to go get it because the surrounding community sees you as a liability. Just like with banks, you know, if your credit score is minuscule, you're not going to get this check to go get a car from Tom Bush. You see what I'm saying? The very same way.
Got it. So, like I said, the next issue and the last one I'll probably ask before I ask for your information is something that's really important to me, and that's Medicare for all. What is the libertarian stance on this? I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts
Yeah.
about it.
Yes, I want you to say it.
I'm pretty sure because it's socialized medicine, you're going to say you're not for it. Yeah, I was pretty much, I'm like, I think this is what he's going to say.
Because this thing about it, this what separates me. This what separates libertarians from Republicans and Democrats. We have a very specific set of principles that we don't violate because so Republicans and Democrats, they change generation to generation depending on the interest of those that put them in office. Well, libertarians is a very set principle that we abide by. You'll never be confused what this about. We have a litmus test. What's the litmus test of being a libertarian? Well, for example, for Democrats, if you're a liberal, you can say, yes, I'm a liberal. Do you want the government to enforce liberal lifestyle onto the populace? Yeah, well, then you're a Democrat. If you're a conservative, you say, yeah. Do you want the government to enforce conservative values on the populace? Yeah, well, then you're a Democrat. But if you're a libertarian, you say you're a liberal. Yeah. Do you want to enforce government on do all that? You say no, because it's not their business. You know what I mean? We're not the fiscally conservative or socially liberal. We're not none of that mess. We're not the middle ground. It's fiscally, it's my money, and socially, it's none of your business. That's all, And with Medicare for all, yeah, take government out of medicine, and then we can solve the issue of Medicare being so freaking expensive. Because as soon as Obama put in the Obamacare and all that stuff, yeah. That was a big no, because like I said, it's socialized medicine, and people who don't need insurance, people who are able-bodied Americans, such as myself, now we have to pay taxes for insurance, a whole claim that we're not even going to be using anytime soon, just for someone who is also able-bodied can have it. It's ridiculous. It's really bad.
Yep, you gave the answer, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. So second to last question. What have you learned from campaigning? Like, what's the one thing that you've learned that even if you don't win this election, that you're going to take? And I'm assuming if you don't win this one, you'll probably run again. But I'm just assuming.
Man, I've learned a lot. I've learned about the value of community, the value of, family, the value of this. I just learned about the social cohesion that Jacksonville has as people. It doesn't matter what race, creed, because I've been to the redneck side, I've been to the black hood side, I've been to the Pride festivals, I've talked to trans people, I've talked to all these different groups, but everybody has this one thing that unites all of them, and that's just the basic necessity for, just for basic human needs to be, to be met. They have aspirations, they have goals, they have dreams, and they all want the government to stay out of their business. And I talk to them, I'm like, man, it's just a really, really cool thing how we all relate to each other in some way, shape, or form. And I also learned that was a good thing. The bad thing is I've learned that I've learned some people are really douchey. I mean, just really bad people. Like for example, it's interesting. I go to the hood, the deepest depths of the hood, and I've never felt so much safer walking around there. I feel really safe. It's all love. People coming out there, they watch their kids playing out there. Everybody know each other since before time. They roast this old person roasting the next old person over there. They'll direct me to this house. Oh yeah, nobody lives there. Go over there. Or if you go this street over, that whole block will sign it because we want this and the third. And they all go to the same church. They all eat the same food. They go to the same spot. So there's such a social cohesion when you go to the hood, and such an optimism about life that is not so present when I go to the more affluent areas where you have the gated communities. Because gated communities, nobody knows everybody. Nobody knows anybody. Everybody is in their own world. Nobody comes to the door. They're all hostile. Like, there's one thing I've noticed. They're all hostile. They all got the ring thing on the doorbell. Nobody comes to the door. They'll speak through that thing. They all have all these things where they can try as hard as possible not to interact with their neighbor. And that's one thing that I did learn. And so it's very interesting. And that my campaign manager, he's a white guy, very white guy. And he'll come out with me and he's like, it's like, hey man, Tracy, we need to go to the hood. I'm like, let's go over here. Let's go to 21st Street. Let's go over here, because he had such a good time talking to the people around there because of how loving they were, and it's just ridiculous how that works out. So I go to these upper echelon areas and they're a lot more hostile. Of course, you'll find people who will, speak to you and break bread with you. But as a whole, man, they hostile, man. So it's just interesting thing that I've learned. Depending on where I go, I get a different, perspective on the surrounding area, and it's pretty dang cool. Yeah.
And see, I said 45 minutes and we over anyway. So last question, because I know you have a packed schedule. Oh, second last question. When is your election?
The election is March 21st, 2023.
Okay.
Early voting will be 2 weeks prior. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. Go to rontracyforjax.com to check out my content. Go to my Facebook, type in the search page RTR4CC to go direct to my page, because I have no time to type. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be one to type Ronald Tracy Robison for Jacksonville City Council District 8. You're not going to want to write all that out. So just type in RTR4CC. You'll go straight to the page, follow that, share my content. I haven't been there as actively, as I usually am, because I'm just hitting pavement and going and getting these signatures done so that I can be qualified to get onto the ballot. And because I anticipate once I get on the ballot, I'm going to be I'll be the first one, but I may be the only one, only one that's on the ballot. So, prayers up that I get ahead. But anyway, my outreach is still very active. Me and the Libertarian Party of Duval County, we fill potholes. We're feeding the homeless. We are we're just very active in the community. And shout out to Eric Parker for Jax and City Council Race District 2. And Pastor Jeremy Tug-Worbaugh for the at-large number 5 seat. Go to Libertarian Party of Duval County Facebook for more information. Connect with us. We have meetings. And we'll be glad to speak with you. Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. Just come out and speak.
And you answered, because I was going to say, how did they connect with you? So Tracy gave all the ways to connect to him. I want to thank, first of all, the people in the comment section. These comments were this is how I want it every week. I want people to just get here where I just can't keep up with the comments. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Tracy, for coming, making time. Again, you knew coming in I was a left winger, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree, but we both know the duopoly is awful. Everyone, remember to please like my page, like this video, share this video to every platform you have. And for the last time, I'm going to ask, please subscribe to my page. I am literally 12 away from 100. I know I can do it. I need your support. Thank you all for watching, and remember to tune in next week when I bite the bullet and whole show by myself, talking about election returns and what to watch, and Hopefully, I won't struggle, but even if I do, I'm still going to try to make it as fun as possible. Thank you, Tracy, for coming. Have a
Thank you.
great evening, everybody. Bye bye.
Peace.